I'm here at the Kenneth More Theatre once again, but this time with the lovely Susie McKenna, who's the Associate Director of the Hackney Empire, and indeed one of the finest principal boys that ever strutted the stage.
That's too kind.
No, it's very true. Susie, now, we've worked together, what, on 2 occasions at least?
Yes, at least. The first one being Bournemouth, I believe. Bournemouth Pavilion, Pantomime Cinderella, and then Nottingham Theatre Royal.
Nottingham Theatre Royal. And of course you are now directing and writing the pantomimes at the Hackney Empire.
Yes, I have been since 1998.
Right, and what's this year's pantomime?
This year's Pantomime Cinderella, no less.
Oh, we'll better get a plug in for it.
Yes, Cinderella, running from December the 2nd through to January the 13th at the Hackney Empire Live.
And who's in it?
Well, our ugly sisters are Michael Kirk, who was Runner Bean last year, played my husband last year, and David Ashley, the lovely David Ashley from Cats, Starlight Express at Fame. And then Tamika Empson's back, who was off her Trolley Molly last year and is now playing the wicked stepmother, Countess Prunella.
So you have a stepmother in your Cinderella?
We do, yes.
We do here at Ilford, strangely enough, because we're doing Cinderella as well, and I think the stepmother's having a return because she sort of disappeared from Panto, didn't she?
She did, actually, and I brought her back. Last time I did Cinderella at Hackney Empire, we had Carol Harrison, and we didn't have, in those days, when money was tight, well, isn't it always? We could either afford a baron or a stepmother. So we ended up, because of casting, we'd cast Carol, I wrote stepmother for her, and our Baron Hardup was a filmed Griff Rhys-Jones.
Oh, good Lord.
But I had to change that this year. We couldn't do that, so I've actually got a Baron and a stepmother this year. I've got the wonderful Peter Straker playing Baron.
Peter Straker, fabulous. Yeah. That's brilliant. Oh, so that's all very exciting, and of course that kicks off, when do you start rehearsing?
November the 6th we start.
Right.
So yeah.
Very early.
Yeah.
Day after Bonfire.
Not far off, and we do 4 weeks rehearsal now, so
4 weeks?
Including the tech, yeah, including the tech.
4 weeks?
Yeah, I've managed to get it longer and longer.
There are shorter runs than those rehearsals. Now, talking of Panto, what can you cast your mind back? What are your first early memories of Panto? What Pantos did you go and see when you were a kid?
I didn't see many.
No.
But I can remember the classic ones I saw. I saw Peter Pan, which was, I think, it was done at one of the big theatres in the Midlands.
Oh, right.
I can't remember which one.
But that would have been then the musical play Peter Pan.
Yes, not the pantomime.
Right.
And that was one of the first times I'd ever been to the theatre. I think I was about 6. I didn't go to the theatre a lot when I was very young because my parents were in the business. And we worked so much. We would be touring, and my parents were on stage so much that I was on stage with them from the age of 2.5.
I've known you all these years, and I never knew that. So what were your parents doing in the business?
They were a double act. My dad was a crooner, singer. Used to call him Britain's Bing Crosby. He was called Ken Swain, and my mum was called Maureen McKenna, and she was a soubrette.
Good Lord.
Which is a word that you don't hear very much nowadays. And she used to do the tap dancing on her tap shoes on the toe taps.
On point?
Yeah. Fantastic tap dancer, much better than me.
That must hurt.
Yeah, I think it must have done. But I used to be in the wings and watch them, and then I used to go on with them and do a couple of numbers, usually Wandery Wanderer and Hello Dolly probably, or Mother Kelly's Doorstep. And
good Lord.
And
I never knew that all these years.
In those days as well. In the second act, I used to come on as a little boy and do black and white minstrel show.
Sweet.
Which of course you don't do these days.
So, I mean, because our last interview was with the lovely Jan Hunt, of course, who also, Jan is a soubrette, and she was telling me that she started off her career as Baby June. She actually was June Hunt in those days, and was a juvenile in pantomime. Were you ever a panto juve? Never?
Yes. I did it a few times, but it was a touring pantomime, a sort of Barry Young. There's a man in Leicester called Barry Young. He used to put on shows.
Indeed.
And when I was about it would be in those days about 10 or 11, I did a few pantos for him there and was a babe. And then I did lots of amateur stuff, but then professionally my first job was chorus in pantomime at Colchester Theatre, Mercury Theatre.
At the Mercury. Of course, a lot of people remember you from your pantos at both Oldham and the Nottingham Playhouse.
Yes.
So how many seasons did you do
I did
there?
2 seasons at Oldham for Kenneth Allen Taylor, and then I did, I think it was 8.
I think, yes.
It's about 8.
At least 8.
At least 8. And Nottingham Playhouse as principal boy, yes. And they were good times.
What was your favourite boy?
Aladdin.
Why?
Because Aladdin gets to do more comedy. I think with Aladdin I was able to be cheeky chap, and you carry so much of the story as well. So it was so important that there was that he was sort of a bit flawed, he was cheeky, and then he makes good. There was a bit more of a journey for him. Does that sound a bit
No, that's right. And it's also, there's a parallel, because Jan Hunt, who was on our last interview, Jan is only about 5'2", and she was saying that it was very difficult for her originally to get the part of Prince Charming, because you'd expect her much taller. So now you are not the tallest lady in the world.
Prince Charming is the only thing I did, the only principal boy I haven't done.
But Aladdin has to be a small but honest youth.
Yes, exactly. So. And I did all the others. I mean, basically all the other principal boys I've played, but Prince Charming, I know. I've always played Dandini if it was Cinderella.
Yes, you played Dandini with me.
Yeah.
And I saw your Jack.
Yes, I did Jack in the Beanstalk. I've done Jack in the Beanstalk about 3 times. And
so you know the story?
I know the story. Well. And I think, and Aladdin I only did once, actually, in all those years. But I did Jack a few times, and I've Dick Whittington about 3 or 4 times.
And of those early pantos, what were your pantomime dames? Who were they? Obviously Kenneth Allen Taylor.
Obviously Kenneth Allen Taylor, and then Jeff Longmore, actually.
Oh, Geoffrey Longmore, yeah.
Was one of the first people. And then who else? John Jardine.
Yes.
Was Dame.
Indeed.
And Richard Frost.
Yes.
Richard Frost, who now directs pantos, I think, at Lewisham, or did do.
Yes.
And I never really worked with many famous names. Most of my career as principal boy was in subsidised theatre rather than big commercial ones.
Well, you did quite posh pantos, didn't you?
We did, yes.
You did all the 4-week rehearsal pantos.
Yes, yes.
Not like us sort of 10-day rehearsal.
Well, I did those ones with you, which were great fun.
They were
I did
lovely,
all those, and early Barry Stacey ones as well. Snow White and 7 Dwarfs.
That's right, we all did that, and Hansel and Gretel probably.
Yes, almost certainly.
So, of all your pantomimes, what one really stays in your memory? What was the happiest panto?
The ones I were in.
Yeah.
I think the very first one I ever did, for a start, because I really felt that this was something I could do. And you don't, I'd always, Kenneth had told me he'd cast me, and I was suggested by his wife, actually, who met me, and Kenneth was looking for someone, and I'd not long come off tour. I'd been doing hair.
Good Lord, taking your clothes off.
Yes, I know.
Taking your clothes off on stage and then playing principal boy.
Of course, it's very wholesome. And I think it was the realisation when I got on that stage, and I'd done pantomime before as a chorus person, and I'd watched Angela Bruce play principal boy, who was really rather good. She was great, actually. And she had the essence that the tomboyish essence that I really loved, and I liked that side of a principal
That's
boy.
what I was going to ask you. What to you, now we're in an age when, I mean, in fact, this year you've cast boys as boys in your panto.
Yes, unusually for me.
Here at Ilford we've cast boys as boys. But what to you is the essence of principal boy played by a girl?
I think to be successful, you have to know that when you're on stage, yes, you're dressed like a sexy woman. You've got your legs out, you're in your fishnet tights, you're in your stiletto heels or your boots.
That sounds actually like what I do.
Well, you should have been principal boy.
That's true.
But you have to be a boy.
So it's truth.
Truth, total truth. You have to fall in love with the girl. You have to want to be the Lord Mayor of London. You have to want to beat the baddie. And the family relationships, like you have to love your mum. That is so important, the truth of the story. Otherwise the kids don't care, or the adults don't care for that matter. And then it's an essence of playing that is twinkly enough for the adults to know that you're quite tongue-in-cheek as that boy, but for the kids, the 7-year-old boys have to be cheering for you as well. It's not good enough just to get away with saying I'm a bit of
I think some of the
toffee.
daddies cheer for you as well.
Oh, I think they did,
yeah.
but I think you sort of ignore that. I genuinely used to ignore that. I used to totally play it, and I direct my pantomimes now very much so for the 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds kids who the truth of the story has to be there. And yeah, if you are a woman playing a boy, you have to make them cheer for you. I remember Kenneth Ann Taylor wanted to do Babes in the Wood, and he wanted me to play Robin Hood. And it was the days when Jason Connery was playing it on the telly.
Oh, I remember,
Remember
yes,
the blonde hair?
Of course.
And I really fought Kenneth on it. I was saying, please don't make me play Robin Hood because I don't know if they'll take me. This was a while ago now, but I was like, he's on telly, and he's gorgeous, and he's a bloke, and times are moving on, Kenneth. I'm not sure if they'll take me. And he wouldn't have it, and he insisted, and so I actually went to fight training and insisted that I had fight training, and I trained to fight with a staff and a sword in stilettos. Because I had to know that I wasn't going to be a feeble, because otherwise the boys would see right through me. And I spent, it was 3.5 weeks I did in sort of, because I didn't go to drama college, fight training, but I did it all in stilettos because it was the only way I could get my calves up to scratch.
But isn't it interesting to think of somebody like the Emma Peel character in the Avengers? That's basically a principal boy, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
She's got the boots, she does all the fighting. It's principal
and I think
boy.
now with the martial arts films and the things like Charlie's Angels, and you have it's now for a sexy woman to kick bottom, shall we say? That actually is now much more acceptable. And you're right, Emma Peel was a forerunner in that. And I think certainly for me, when I was being a tomboy myself, I definitely wanted, if I did a fight, if I fought, I wanted it to look good. I didn't want it to be namby-pamby.
So have you ever played principal girl?
No.
No, and had
Never.
no desire
had
to?
no desire ever to play Principal Girl.
No.
I remember Kenneth once suggested it to me and said it would make her comedy, and I was like, yes, it would be. And so that was...
Okay, so it's definitely boy.
But I like baddies now.
And where's the progression from boy? Where does boy lead to?
Boy led to baddie for me.
Right.
I think should be when I came a little bit larger, and but also not just because of that. Actually, it was just it was the challenge of being a baddie. To be fair, I'd done every principal boy going.
So it's the meaty parts that appeal.
Yes.
Yeah, and your baddies have been bad. You've been bad fairy.
I've been bad fairy. Last year I invented these two bad beans, runner bean and broad bean, against fairy sweet pea, and we were very nasty. And that was great fun because it was a double act really with Michael Kirk, who we hadn't worked together for years, and it was fun. And I loved that because I was green and vile, and I just like being nasty. I think it was all the years of having to be fabulously lovely and nice. When I actually came to really start directing, it was such a release to be so vile. And so I played Vanity in Mother Goose. Was the first baddie I ever played. Right.
Now that's interesting because I mean a lot of people no longer know the story of Mother Goose even, and there's demon. It's usually demon Vanity, or in your case I would have thought demoness Vanity.
Demoness Vanity. Yeah, she was a witch.
Yeah.
And I love Mother Goose is my favourite panto, and it's not one of the most, I suppose, popular. I don't know if it is or not.
It's coming back.
I think it should, because it's one of the most moral, and it's got such a lot to say about today. So today is about celebrity, it's about how you look. You've got kids wanting to be a size 0, and what the moral in Mother Goose, which is about beauty within and not in the outside, is something that I think, yes, let's bring it on that stage and get those kids cheering.
You're right, actually. I suppose that is one of the most moral, and I always think actually Aladdin is the most immoral.
Yeah.
Jack is more immoral.
I changed Jack. That was awful.
How did you change it?
Well, I became quite without being too worthy about it, I have quite a big responsibility with being at Hackney Empire. We have a lot of kids that don't go to the theatre any other time of the year. It's a borough full of quite strong crime,
right,
and child-on-child crime. A lot of the kids I work with at Hackney, it's like a war out there for them. And so when it over the years, and I've never changed the story before in my life, I couldn't bring myself, with all the wars that was happening, with all the ideas of people killing each other because they're different or they worship something different, I couldn't bring myself to kill the giant, and everybody was like shock, horror, and I know it might sound worthy, but it was a genuine thing that I felt that within these days now, fairy tales have always been tales that are supposed to have a moral. They've always been watered down over the years, particularly by pantos sometimes. Some pantos, when you actually go back to the original stories, they're either very violent or they're very one-dimensionally moral.
Indeed.
And I think that now our fairy stories, our society has changed, and please God, we're changing for the better, but I'm not so sure. Perhaps we can do that with some of our stories. And so instead of Jack being just a murderer and a thief, which, to be honest, he basically is.
Yeah.
And then sometimes panto try and make the giant horrible, but they don't go far enough, or I decided that it was. I changed it. I did a sort of prequel. I did a Star Wars on it, and I did a little bit of a prologue, whereby when Jack was a little baby, his father was obviously the man with his cottage and his wife.
The subplot.
And basically the giant and the giantess were longing for a child, and it was all about nature, and they were magical beings, and they could control nature. And she sows a seed and prays to the goddess of nature for a baby. But it all goes wrong, and the seed falls through the earth, through the sky, and into another world that no one had ever seen before, which is Jack's dad's world and Jack's world. And the beanstalk grows for the first time, and the giantess sees Jack, and she bends down, she picks him up, and they're playing, and she's in love. But of course she's a giantess, and so the dad runs out, and he thinks she's trying to kill him or kidnap him, so he chops down the beanstalk, and the giantess dies and disappears into the earth, and with it so does Jack, his dad. Oh. And that's where we sort of started.
How long was this banter?
Oh, it was really
5
short.
hours?
No, 2 hours. It was 2 hours.
Good Lord.
And it was all done. We did it with puppetry. We did it with
I see.
Very
Right.
simply. We did it with a song, and with Sweet Pea, the goddess of nature's daughter, singing this little song. And it was all it was. And so for the rest of the story, it's about Jack righting the wrong, really.
Right.
And he doesn't really know why he's destined to go up there.
That's interesting, because on the site recently, I was doing the Pant of the Month, which was Jack, and I'd always been worried about the morals. And indeed, there's a sort of version of your prequel, being that the original treasure and all the money belonged to Jack's father anyway.
Ah, yes.
And the fairy, who's a rather strange fairy in the original story, Jack and the Beanstalk, Jack must never let on to his mother what he's done, because of various things that happened in the background. It looks like even in the 1600s they were trying to justify this immoral story.
Definitely. Every time I went back to any references, there was always something there that was trying to say, and so that's why I did it. And we eventually and we didn't kill the giant, and we left it to the. I was terrified on the opening night, because everybody was. They were with me, but they were still waiting for it to mess up, if you like. I left it to the children. I turned to the children and asked if we should kill the giant.
And they said?
No.
I'm amazed. That's brilliant.
I was pretty shocked.
Yeah, because normally...
I'm not saying there wasn't the odd one.
Yeah.
And actually, that was usually an adult.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Do you remember the famous ones where like, the principal boy came down the front and said... how shall we punish the giant, boys and girls? And the audience shouted, "Sing to him." You always get the odd one.
That wasn't one of mine, was it?
Well, not one of yours. No, it's actually a very famous lady who I won't mention.
I like that.
Why don't you sing to him?
I remember things like, when the cat. We used to kill the cat for 2 seconds in Dick Whittington and Kenneth's pantos, and then we used to have to bring it to life, and all the children used to go, "Puss will live," total Nick from
Peter Pan, if you believe in fairies.
And I remember this this northern adult voice, give it a tin of kitty cat. It's lovely. Yes, we love them like that.
But it is amazing that over the years, when I first started doing pantomimes, our villains were killed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they used to go down a trap and they were killed. And I can't remember a villain actually being killed now for...
Very rarely, no.
Very long time. Usually they're turned into Boy Scouts, or they have to go and be traffic wardens. Oh, terrible fate.
Terrible fate.
But they're never killed. Oh, and locked in a dark room and forced to watch Crossroads. Used to be the one, wasn't it?
That used to be the one.
Now I think it's become Big Brother.
Big Brother or anything like that. No, I know. I think that, and I think that's one reason why I hadn't ever killed anybody in any of my pantos that I'd written and for Hackney. And I think when it came to doing Jack, I was like, well, I haven't done it yet, so why am I doing it now?
And your giant wasn't vegetarian?
No.
No. Right. Okay. Or organic.
Well, he could have turned. I think he turned vegetarian in the end. I think that's what happened.
Yeah, you see.
And that's why he burped out.
What are the fun moments that you can remember? Because everybody, whenever I'm going somewhere and doing a press call, they always say to me, what's the things that went wrong? And you say, well, actually, things don't go wrong in pantomime because they're too well rehearsed. No, but what are the fun moments that you can remember? I mean, the ones that you can talk about. Some of them
are pretty mad. Yeah, the ones I can talk about. I remember being in Oldham, and there were this particular audience that was in had, shall we say, a reputation. It was the bus company's children.
Right, the Boyle Sweetie throwing brigade.
Yeah, and there was always a problem with that, and the shout of lesbians and things. But this audience was particularly, it was the first one, it was my first principal boy, and it was the first, I was being warned by everybody about all of this. And it was going okay, and we had OAPs down in the bottom, and this party from the bus company in the circle. And I'm standing on stage, and I'm thinking, I think my eyes are going a bit strange, because I could see little lights coming down from the circle, and they were just sort of little zoomy lights, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, what the heck's that? And my eyes are going funny. And I came off stage, and I was like, something's going down, something's going on out there, and the message came back, yes, it's all right, we're stopping it, and I'm like, well, what is it? And it was the kids from the bus company were lighting matches and throwing them on the OAPs down in the thing.
Lovely.
And that was fun. But
have you worked with Hilary O'Neill?
No, I know her.
Hilary did Puss in Boots with me, and I mean, I'm going back a very long time ago, when in those days you could actually smoke in theatres, as we remember, and some of the louts in the audience set me on fire. I was Puss in Boots, and Hilary was Principal Boy, and she started hitting me, and I thought, why is she hitting me? I'm her friend, the cat.
Yeah,
no, she was actually putting the flames out.
I remember a compass going into the bottom of a pantomime horse.
What? You don't mean a northwest, you mean a geometry compass?
A geometry compass went into the bum of the back end of the horse, and when the kid was asked, why did he do it, he said, well, it's not a real horse.
Nice.
That was hospitalised. Yeah, that was pretty bad.
And the tetanus jab that follows.
Yeah. But I guess a lot of the fun that I used to have on stage with Kenneth, I think the days when we'd been working together for many years, the fact that we really did used to be terrible to each other and would ad-lib appallingly and
have great fun. I can remember when we did Bournemouth, we were with June Brown, weren't we?
We were, it was great.
And it was always hit and miss whether June would remember to actually not take a cigarette on stage with her.
She's usually smoking in the wing.
Dr. Cotton anniversary. Yeah. But do you remember, I suppose you probably weren't there at the time, that June had to enter, of course, the fairy side. I'm standing next to her, and as one of the cloths went up, it whipped her wig off.
Yes, it did.
You remember that?
Fantastic.
There's the wig.
There's the wig flying
through the air.
Those visual things
are
just great. I remember doing Dick Whittington at Hackney, and it was the first one that we'd done in-house. I'd done 2 other pantos at Hackney, but this was the first one in-house. And we were very short of money in those days. I mean, it really was on a sixpence. And we couldn't afford a full monster costume. So what we had, it was the days of the Godzilla film.
Oh, yes.
So we were on the island, so Godzilla's on the island. And instead of having a full costume, we made a head. Just the head, but it was massive.
What, just poked his head round?
Yeah, so it was a huge head, and it went down to one of the ensemble's waists.
Right.
And he could work the mouth.
Right.
And we had it stuck behind a tree, so he was on a platform, and he was behind the tree, and Godzilla came forward, like this. And I wasn't in Dick Whittington. It was the first one I wasn't in, and it was the first time I'd ever been physically sick on an opening night.
Oh.
I suddenly realised that's why I'm in them, because I don't get nervous.
Yes.
But when I'm in the audience, I get very nervous.
This is all your responsibility.
Terrible.
Yeah.
This wasn't on the opening night, I hasten to add, but it was quite a way into the run, and I went in to see the show. And I stood at the back of the theatre, and Godzilla comes on, like this. And the next thing we know, the flat that he was behind falls onto the floor. So all you have, and it was Carl Paris, Carl Paris is now my choreographer, and he gets reminded of it all the time when we're at Hackney. He has very long, very, very gorgeous black legs going down, but he had his little t-shirt on, and he had nothing else on, his little knickers and his bare legs, and this big head. And of course he didn't know that the flat had gone down, so he's carrying on, pulling the levers, and the audience were just in hysterics. And of course the cast couldn't speak, and he couldn't work out where. And so he's sort of slightly trying to look round, so you can sort of see this thing. And I mean, it was the best laugh I've ever had. And of course everybody thought I was going to be furious, and I said, are you kidding? It was one of the best days I've had in the theatre.
I suppose that's live theatre, isn't it?
That's what it's all about.
I mean, no panto performance is really the same as the last one, is it?
I think that's why I love it. I think that's why I've spent so many years doing panto. It's that, I mean, that's why I love theatre more than anything, but it is pantomime more above all is...
Because panto hasn't, I mean, panto now takes over an awful lot of your time, I would think.
Yes, I mean, it starts, you know, it over the last few years, it's certainly, you know, it's an all year round thing, although I still do other work. It is a constant thing. It starts in February.
Yeah.
But you know the same as I do.
Well, it's the same.
Once you start putting them on, it is actually...
and you're writing them in the height of the summer when everybody else is out enjoying themselves.
I'm very lucky. I go to Spain to write.
Oh.
I know.
I write mine in Ilford.
That's glamorous.
Yeah.
No, I'm lucky. My mum's got a place in Spain. So,
right. But I mean, you've also been, apart from, obviously, pantomime being part of your life, you've been in quite a few West End musicals. I'm trying to think of them off the top of my head.
Cats.
You did Cats?
And did the film of Cats, the video of Cats as well.
Oh, which is available in all shops.
Available in all shops. I'm not on a percentage yet. They bought us out for about 14 years.
Oh, what a shame. Never mind.
But when I'm in my 70s,
right.
whatever it is. And Wishes of Eastwick, Ragtime. Was Emma Goldman in Ragtime?
Wishes of Eastwick. Now, that's
that was great. I joined the second company, which was with Clark Peters, who was amazing as the devil, and it was just stunning. And then with Rebecca Thornhill and who else was there?
And have you ever had years where you've had to you've been in a dressing room doing a musical and also sitting down and writing a pantomime?
Yes, yeah,
that must be quite.
That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, especially when I was doing the West End shows more regularly. Certainly going through, I mean, Cats was crazy because I was writing while we were doing that, and
hopefully not Puss in Boots while you're doing Cats.
No.
Too confusing.
Too confusing. Totally mad. No, I mean, and I don't know what you do, but I tend to write all the year. I don't really sit down at the computer until I've got quite a lot of stuff written in note form. And
I'm not.
You're not like that.
I'm sit down and like Rapunzel, who was forced into a tower. I make myself sit down for about a week and force myself to do it. But I think you're right.
It's in your mind all the time.
Yes, every time I'm bobbing about, I keep thinking, I might do, that's a good idea.
And a little reference.
Yes.
Or you see something, or you blatantly plagiarise a line. Or
yes.
But you go, well, actually, you know, I can watch Will and Grace.
Plagiarise? We never plagiarise.
Get out of it.
Not in panto.
But I mean, you know, you watch something like Will and Grace, and without, you know, as long as it's not any of the blue stuff, you can actually really, fantastic ugly sister material.
It is, I suppose.
And, you know, you look at stuff like that, and particularly... For me, for Hackney, it's important that we have to be streetwise.
Yes.
You know,
I'm
our
sure,
audience take no prisoners.
I'm sure Catherine Tate would be horrified, but she's a very good source of pantomime.
Fabulous.
She's very good for the punchline. She gives
Absolutely.
very good catchphrases.
Yeah.
Now, what's the interesting thing I'm going to say to you is, do you do a traditional song sheet at Hackney?
Yes.
And it's not specially written. It's something.
Oh no,
flavour of the month.
No,
or?
we do specially write them.
Oh, you're lucky.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'll be honest with you. This is really honest now. I'm really not a fan of song sheets.
No, I hate them.
And it's one of those necessary evils, really. And I really try and make them either as short as possible.
Are you like me? When you go to see a panto, do you tend to nip out during the song sheet?
I read the programme.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know, you know, I have been over the years trying to find ways. There was only one year I cut it, and but even then, we didn't do a song, but of course we still had to do a bit of birthdays and stuff because we had to change the set.
Of course.
And I think that's it. It's basically there so that you can change the set.
And everyone can change frock.
And I know that that's for the adults. They groan. It's like, oh my God, we've got to do this. And so we did it one year where I had Sharon D. Clark playing Fairy Godmother. And so in order to buy time, we did a little short reprise, and I think the number we did was As, which was really height of George Michael and
is he a pop singer?
Yes, he is a pop in the hit parade.
Right.
So we were doing As, and it's a big sort of gospely type feel, and then we all started to go off. And we couldn't think how to finish this song. So it's one of those things that every time you think you're coming to the end,
it goes round
again. You think, oh, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
So my MD and I, Stevie, just was looking at each other. How are we going to finish it? I said, it's all right. We'll just it's Sharon D. Clark. And if you don't know Sharon D. Clark's voice, it's wonderful.
Huge
She's original
voice.
Killer Queen in We Will Rock You. I said, just let her riff it out. And that's how you finish it. You let her finish it on her own, on stage. And then she can chat to the kids, it'd be fine. So, first couple of nights, we realised that the first dress rehearsal, we realised we didn't have enough, I needed more time, so I did have to do a bit of birthdays. But I kept saying to her, I tell you what, can you make the riff longer? And it got to the point where on the opening night, I was so worried about it not being there on time. I said, riff for days, and she never forgets this now. She heard me screaming at her from the wings, going, riff for days, and she's going, and then she's giving it.
I wonder if the public realise what's going on. I don't suppose they do really, because that's the whole purpose of it, isn't it? That we are distracting them while 30 people backstage are frantically changing their frocks. The crew are changing the scenery.
I think it was funny actually. Last year it was technically probably one of the hardest pantos we've done at Hackney, and we try. It's getting harder. We're really trying to push it, sort of, and in some of the effects we do, and the crew at Hackney are absolutely second to none. I wouldn't be able to do anything like we do without them. And Hoffman Reed is our technical manager, and he's just a genius. And I'd got to the point, I think it had been such a heavy tech period, and we'd had such a amazing stuff that the crew were pulling off, and you know what it's like when the crew can do that, and they do. These crews on the pantos, they love it. They're often very passionate.
So
pride in what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, particularly I think when you do them in house at Hackney, there's an ownership there for both front of house and everything.
Yeah.
Very important to us at Hackney in that sense. Particularly because we receive so much work. It's important when we're doing something in house.
Of course.
And it was the first year, and some people loved it. And I have to say more people loved it than hated it. But I gave a crew call, and not everybody thought that was a good idea.
Really?
And particularly my producer, actually, who wasn't sure. And it was odd, because I think what it was, I only initially did it.
We better explain what a crew call is.
A crew call was right at the end. We'd done all the bows, and we were actually, we'd done the last reprise.
Right.
And we took a company call.
Right.
And then we suddenly split, turned up stage, and the crew were on.
Marvellous.
And basically I'd rehearsed it madly because I didn't want it to look tacky.
Right.
And so they took a great deal of pride in getting there in a flick of an eye, which was really impressive as well, that suddenly they were there. And the audience were amazing. They got it and they really loved it. And the kids I saw, I watched, particularly because people weren't sure if it should happen or not, and I looked into the audience and I saw the kids' mouths open because they suddenly saw all these people.
This is how it's done.
This is how it's done.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it without that.
No.
And I know some people might say that was breaking the magic.
No.
I found it as it was the best thank you.
Yeah.
And I did say to the crew, look, if you don't want to do it, it's fine. And there were some reluctant ones. Well, it initially was only supposed to be on the press night. And we left it another week and I said, well, okay. They kept saying, can we do it again? We really liked it. And it was so well rehearsed. I said, well, come on then, let's do it every Saturday night. I think it was by Christmas week, they all had friends in.
Right, it's every night.
So then the crew were going,
every night.
my Auntie Alice is in tonight, can we do it? So by then it was every night. I never did it on the matinees until the last week, and then we did it. So it grew.
You're right, it is important that I mean, when we do our pantomime roadshow, the first half of the roadshow we do a show. In the second half we sort of break down what happens backstage in a panto. And it is amazing when you think how many people are physically involved in a pantomime. Apart from the cast, apart from the musicians, the ensemble, there's probably, how many have you got at Hackney altogether? How many crew?
Gosh, I'm just trying to think now. It's at least 12.
12, I was going to say.
I would say 12 plus dressers.
Then you've got
front
house.
of house, and then you've got your lighting, your sound, and your follow spot operators.
Then your marketing.
Then you've got marketing.
Box
office. I mean, and also the ushers in Hackney Empire. The last few years, we've done a lot of stuff in the auditorium.
Yeah.
A lot of puppet work and things. We had dragons flying over the top of the audience, and that the ushers had to do it.
And then of course you've got the cleaners, because between shows there's not long to
and
get.
And the turnaround is massive, and the bars and everything.
I suppose it's probably employing a great many
30,
people.
40, maybe even more.
Even more.
And definitely there is it's very important to me that everybody who works on that, because it's such hard work, you're doing 2 shows a day, and you're working on stage, that's hard work, but front of house, I don't envy them.
It's a long
I don't
day.
envy them at all, and I just think that only really works if there's a sense of ownership for the show, and that it's their show, and that it's about having about having fun.
Well, the very last question is, pantomime, will it survive?
I think it will, as long as it keeps to 2 things.
Yeah.
That the standard is high, both visually, with storytelling, which I think so often is lost.
The most important bit is
the story. The most important thing is the story, and I think it will only survive if it keeps to that. Because I think over the years, and with the if you like, the influx of television and the influences of if you like, popular culture, and even if you like certain star turns who, dare we say, maybe not really be able to do it, I think we've turned the corner on that one. I think there was a bit of a time when there were certain people who, because they were on television or they were famous.
But now we're getting the ones who really can.
Now we're getting the ones who can do it, and I think that will help its survival. And I do think that it is about the story and about not selling out to the kids. I think as long as we still remember that predominantly it's the first time that a lot of children come to the theatre, and that for that reason and that reason alone, it has to be at the height of professionalism and standard that theatre can bring, and magic. And the magic is so important, because then the kids will go away and never forget it.
And come back.
Yeah. And I think that's what will make pantomime survive. That's why it will survive if people keep to that. And I think as long as they do. And, when I think about how passionate you are about panto, and working with you, and I know that it was working with people like you and Kenneth Allen Taylor and Des Barrett when I was really young, and although I didn't do pantomime with Des, but I used to spend hours talking to him about it. I think as long as there are people that get that enthusiastic and that passionate about pantomime and wanting to do it well, it will survive. I think if it just becomes a money-making machine, then it won't.
So just to reiterate, this season, one of the musts is going to be the Hackney Panto.
I hope so. It's
Cinderella.
getting harder every year. I mean, it does feel like we have to top ourselves.
And tell us again, remind us when it runs until?
It opens on December the 2nd, and we run until an extra week this year.
Ooh.
We're doing till January the 13th.
Right.
And we have Matt Dempsey back, who was in Jack
Right.
and the Beanstalk, and as I said, Tamika Empson, who was in Three Non-Blondes and Beautiful Thing.
And the box office just happens to be open now?
It is open now.
I better go and book my ticket.
Book your tickets.
Susie, it's been wonderful to speak to you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for spending some time with us on It's Behind You.
And thank you for asking me, and also for all the help you've always given me over the years.
My pleasure. Here's the tenner. Bye-bye.